Hello. It's the one and only guy Johnny, and I'm here with 5D Transformations. This is an important video, and what I'm really gonna touch on is the shadow side. It's a big aspect of psychology, a big aspect of life, the reality that we live in collectively, and it's something that we all face. But I want you to shed a different light on it, and really understanding the science of it and how it affects us. And I've done videos on it in the past, but I want us to really understand that the shadow side essentially is everything that doesn't align with us, on a natural, comfortable level. I want you to think of the things that are comfortable to us. That's like, we can call that the lighter side. Your family, the people you care about, the things that you enjoy, the music you like, the shows you like, the routines that you like, the dream lifestyle that you want. These are all things that are easy to transition to. Like if I were to tell you that tomorrow you're gonna get $1 million in your account, you're gonna get the partner of your dreams, and from there you get to live your life. I'm sure a lot of people would be extremely happy because they're like, bet, everything gets easy, and then they can just do what it is they want to do. And what I'm here to say is, okay, that's great. There's things that you like. You might be somebody that likes to cook. You might be somebody that likes to eat. You might want to be somebody that likes to travel. But then the crazy thing about the shadow side of life is that there's another person where their light side is actually all the things that are your shadow side. And then all the things that you would consider your shadow side are the things you don't like or don't want to be aligned with. Those are the things that they love. There's people who are afraid of heights, and then there's people who literally that go skydiving. There are people who love to, work out every day. There's people who love to compete. And then there's people who hate going to the gym. So if you were to take that person that's in the gym every day and say, all right, you got to wake up tomorrow at 5 o'clock and do a hard workout, they're like, cool, that's my light side. I mean, that's what I do, that's what I do. Like, cool. Whereas somebody that hates working out, that's going to be like lifting a boulder. It's going to be the worst day for them the next day. It's going to be like, man, it's going to be horrible, Now, what's so funny is we're all existing in the same world, but we all have a different light and dark side. And our awareness of this is what I believe makes you a dynamic person. And this is what I think when we talk about the narcissist versus the empath, and I'm going to do a separate video on this, like a part 2, just going a little bit in depth on the narcissist aspect of this. But when you understand this, you begin to realize that, like, there really is no right and wrong way. There's just really a right and wrong way for you, relative to you. Like, if you're a Democrat, the Republicans are going to look like, that's going to be your shadow side. You don't want to deal with that side of things. For the Republican, they're going to look at the Democrat. That's their shadow side. They don't really pay attention to those things. Those things don't move them. Those things kind of annoy them, the stuff that the Democrats talk about. Not everybody, but just some people who are Republicans, some people are Democrats. A lot of people, to be honest, we know that, And so with that, on one level, you can stay in your comfort zone. You can just be in your light side all day. But here's the crazy thing about life, and here's my whole point to this. Even though there's a lot more I can expound on, I'm going to keep it short and simple, is that, you can stick to your light side and do everything that's comfortable. You can be the goody two-shoes, like some people, they go to church every Sunday, have their job, do everything the right way. They don't rub anybody the wrong way, easy going. And they're following their light side. But at the same time, you're in a world where you're going to have to be uncomfortable, because you're in a world where you have to die. And there's a world where you're going to go through a form of suffering in a lot of cases. And a lot of people go through things without their control. You know, you might lose people around you. And I don't want to be negative or anything, but like, that's only negative if we view it as the shadow aspect, right? If we view it as something that we don't embrace. We all have something that we don't like. We all have something that might trigger fear. We all have things that might trigger anxiety. Now, that's something we share. Now, what those things are all different. And that's what makes us unique. But then we're all the same because we all still have anxiety about something. You know, somebody's anxiety might be having to cross the street and you might be like, wow, that's funny, right? And your anxiety might just be you're in the middle of, you know, somebody might be in the military in the middle of a war and their anxiety is a bomb dropping on them at any point, right? It's like they both have, one is just crossing the street, the other is a bomb dropping. One has a much more escalated threat if you look at it like from if you look at it from a certain perspective, but to the individual, it's the same fear and anxiety. So it's the same. They share that. They just share it in different based on different things, different triggers. So what makes a human being really special, and what 5D transformations is really big on, is transformation. It's transforming, which means, and here's an interesting thing that I want you to really understand that I've learned more and more to start studying Carl Jung and studying certain teachers and books and things, is that there is no real meshing of the two for this little perfect thing. It's like, for example, the sun is the sun, the moon is the moon, right? Like day is day, night is night. There's always a natural conflict of life. As long as you can't have the sun out all day because it's too imbalanced, there will always be a conflict between the two sides. There will always be the things that are easy for you, that you love, the dream world that you see in your mind. Then there will always be things that counter that, things that don't really flow as easy, And the will of a human being and the power of a human being and your journey is to navigate through that and be able to still create something special and be able to succeed and attain what you desire in a situation where you're dealing with a conflicting reality. We're in the third dimension. We're in a 3D world, which means we're dealing with masculine, feminine energy. We're dealing with duality. Outside, like we're the third point and we're looking at duality. We're looking at this point versus this point, and then it's us. Now, of course, life is much more complex than that, but that's how we're viewing it. We're viewing it as good or bad. If this happens, great. If this happens, horrible. And that's just the nature of it. And so the question is, how do you get a handle on that shadow side? And I realized that you don't want to run away from the shadow side, because if you run away from it and just stay in comfort and just do the things that are comfortable to you, what's going to happen is you're going to be ill-equipped to deal with life. You're not going to be able to conquer life and take it on freely. There's like an element of life where if you can find a way, I'm not telling you to fall in love with your shadow side, because that's not realistic. Like, what you don't like, you don't like. I'm not going to tell you to make yourself like what you don't like. But what I will say is, how do you manage that? How do you take what it is that you don't like, the shadow things, and understand that there's nothing to really be afraid of? It's just the way you're perceiving it. And that the best thing you can do is first understand what's going on here. Like, okay, it's not that what I fear is actually something really worth fearing. It's just more so something that I'm uncomfortable with. It's a shadow thing. It's something that I'm just not comfortable with it. It's not in my daily routine. Now, all like transformation, evolution, that requires you to not be comfortable. Because if you're comfortable, you're just going to stay in the same pattern. What triggers development and growth is change, transformation. Uncomfortability is what triggers creation. You know, the universe is always expanding. Human beings are always creating more things. Why do we create so many things? Because there's so much demand. There's so much uncomfort that we create all of these things. We wouldn't buy a couch. We wouldn't buy a sofa. We wouldn't buy, like a armchair. We wouldn't buy a coffee table. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't buy an office desk, an office. We wouldn't buy a car. Like, everything that is created is meant to counter an uncomfort. It's meant to add light to the shadow side. So really, what we want to do is use the things that are uncomfortable for us as an agent to create something great. And what you'll find is that's how your shadow side begins to serve you. It's not by, oh, kumbaya, all of a sudden I embrace all of my shadow stuff. No. What you do is you say, all right, look, I don't like this. You know what I mean? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delve into this with my fear so that I have a view of it, because there's a power in the fact that you're uncomfortable, that you're afraid of that. Because if you're afraid of that, other people are afraid of that. If you're have fear and anxiety about that, you know, it's outside of your perimeter, and you know that. So now you know, okay, why is that? Or what am I going to do to face that? You know, I'm going to face it head on, because I know that really isn't the thing I should be afraid of. And then you start to realize there's really nothing to be afraid of. Even death itself, even suffering itself, there's nothing to fear. And that's what they mean when they say there's nothing to fear but fear itself. There's nothing to fear about it. It's just that it's something that is on my shadow side, which has to happen, because you have to have a shadow side in order to have a light side. It's just a part of being in this world. And you start to realize now we're talking about spiritual principles now. We're talking about duality and polarity. And we're talking about the fact that when you understand this, you won't feel bad about having anxiety. You shouldn't feel bad about that. You shouldn't feel sad about having these triggers. What you really need to realize is like, okay, great. We all have triggers. And now I see the areas that are my shadow areas. And now that you know your shadow areas, guess what? Now you get to see how powerful you really are. Now you really get to see your growth. Now you have an agent for you to measure your growth. Because if you were afraid of something before, and now you have the capacity to do it with confidence, guess what? You've now conquered part of your shadow side, and now you're starting to delve into more parts of your brain. You're starting to open up different parts of yourself. You're starting to expand. You're starting to transform into something else. But you could never transform if you didn't have a shadow side. And you start to realize that you need to have, well, not you don't need to, but fear and anxiety is a part of the experience of life in this realm in order for us to experience growth. And it's actually the agent to how far you're going to grow. So embrace it instead of letting it dominate you. And I'm not going to say, oh, don't let it dominate you. You dominate it. That's like unreasonable, because some of these fears are very deep seated and they're based on psychology. They're very deep. So something Carl Jung really touched on to a degree from what I've read and heard is that he didn't try to eliminate the fear. What he did was basically say the testament of your power is going to be in your ability to be afraid or have anxiety, acknowledge that it's there, and make decisions that aren't anchored by that. So you might be afraid to do something, you might have anxiety about something, but you're not going to let that control what you do. You're going to use that to make a measured decision, but you're not going to let that stop you from doing what it is that you have to do to fulfill your destiny, to be who you need to be. You don't come into this world automatically being the person you desire to be. You come into this world and you develop into the person you want to be. You may be afraid, or you may be at this point in your life, you may have this look that you don't like and you want to get over there. The journey of life is your journey getting over there. Why aren't you over there? Because there's shadow aspects of yourself that you haven't conquered, that you have to conquer, or that you have to implement or deal with and face in order for you to become that thing that you want to be. And to the degree that you become that thing is going to be to the degree that you deal with the anxiety, the fears, and the shadow side. So the shadow side is an integral part of this reality for you to measure to measure your growth and to measure where you are, to measure your limitations. And then now you have the capacity to go beyond that, but it's there still. And it's like, what are you going to do? We're all dealing with it in our own ways. So you can push past it because people are doing it, but most people aren't. So what are you going to do? And that is the testament of your experience here. So, I don't want to keep going. I made a little bit longer than I wanted to, but that's my message. And I really want to get y'all feedback, man. Leave a comment on this one. I really want to get some feedback, hear what you guys got to say about the shadow side, the science of the shadow side, implementing it and incorporating it in your life, and realizing that it's actually an agent for you versus something that is like this big, like, cloud in your life. It's actually just a part of life. Like, you can't have life without death. You can't have, death without birth. You can't experience this thing without dealing with the dual side. So once you realize that it's an integral part of reality, then you ask yourself, okay, so this must be a game going on. And I'm going to measure my spiritual, my soul's development in this body based on how I navigate these things. And when you realize that, you realize, okay, things start to get a little bit interesting now. You start to realize what's really going on and break out of the frame of just being hijacked by your fears. So share your feedback. Looking forward to hearing that. If you ever need coaching, reach out at your 5dtransformations@gmail.com. Make sure to like and subscribe. I appreciate you all listening, and we'll talk soon. Peace.